I'm going to share my screen, so please give me a moment and we'll open with a video.
NASA is going back to the moon. Joining forces with international and commercial partners, NASA is leading the partnership that is building and will operate Gateway, humanity's first space station in lunar orbit. Gateway, based at NASA's Johnson Space Center, with elements across the agency and around the world, will advance human exploration and further scientific research in deep space for the benefit of all humanity. Built with a minimum 15-year lifespan around the moon, Gateway will be an essential element for long-term Artemis missions and the stepping stone to Mars. But we're not doing it alone. For more than 40 years, NASA has partnered with space agencies around the world to conduct meaningful research on the space shuttle, as well as build and operate the International Space Station. And today, we're expanding those relationships. NASA has once again teamed up with our international and commercial partners to build humanity's next orbital outpost. And all this is happening right now. The modules that will enable these new lunar discoveries are being manufactured in the United States and around the world today. With Gateway, we're going back to the moon and looking forward to Mars.
All right, again, I'd like to thank everyone for joining today. We do have a separate chat to ask questions, so please do not use the chat on the webinar. Use the chat link that was dropped, and we will go ahead and begin. As you saw in the video, the Gateway space station around the moon is a very exciting piece for humanity and future space exploration. It is being built around the world. There are multiple components of Gateway that will begin launching. Currently, the plan is late 2028, and Gateway will slowly be assembled in lunar vicinity. And we have contributions from domestic partners and international partners. And what's exciting, especially for our community, is the human health science that Gateway will enable. And the Gateway Human Health Discipline Working Group is the group that did put out this RFI. So I'll talk a little bit about the Human Health Discipline Working Group, and then you will hear from each of the agencies on the importance of Gateway and human health for future space exploration. And then we will open it up for questions. So a little bit about the Human Health Discipline Working Group. It has 3 legs. It's not just human research, but it's also advancing medical operations and tech development in the health arena. And so this group has been active for almost 5 years, and it's composed of the Gateway partners. And we do have a set of objectives that we've developed that will help guide us in what science should be conducted on Gateway. And the 4 objectives were also in the RFI. So just to touch on them today, again, advancing medical operations. So what do we need around the moon to help us further human exploration, where crews will need to be Earth independent? So you're looking at crew autonomy and vehicle autonomy. The second objective is integrated human system research. So again, how does human physiology, psychology, teams perform in this deep space operational environment? The third is, how are they living in this unique environment? And what aspects of the vehicle or the environment affect their health and performance? And the last one is, what specific tasks will the crew need to do on these missions, and how can we enable that? Because humans were built for Earth, and so when we take them off of Earth into microgravity and on partial gravity of the lunar surface or of a Martian surface, things change. Our bodies react differently. So these are our 4 objectives. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to our ESA colleague from the Human Health Discipline Working Group, Christiane Hahn, and she's going to talk about ESA.
Hello, everyone. So, Gateway plays a crucial role in preparing for deep space exploration by offering a unique environment to study a major human health hazard, and that is radiation. So, unlike in low Earth orbit, where Earth's magnetic field still provides some protection, the Gateway exposes astronauts to much higher levels of cosmic radiation, including galactic cosmic rays and solar particle events. This is also why ESA is committed to deliver important radiation payloads to Gateway to characterize and monitor the radiation environment at Gateway, both externally and internally. So performing human health research on Gateway provides an opportunity to investigate how radiation interacts with other space stressors, such as microgravity, isolation, and confinement. These combined factors could intensify health risks, and understanding their interactions will be vital to mitigate their effects. So ESA is dedicated to, together with our international partners and the community, to contribute to better understand these health risks and to develop countermeasures to overcome these health challenges. And this knowledge will be vital for future missions as we look towards Mars, where astronauts will face prolonged exposure to high levels of radiation alongside other physical and psychological stressors.
Thank you, Christiane. Next, I'm going to show a video. It was pre-recorded from our JAXA colleagues. So we do have Tatsuya Aiba joining us from the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency. And it is very, very early in the morning his time. So we have pre-recorded a message.
Thank you, Lori. Today, I would like to talk about JAXA's gateway utilization. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay, JAXA is one of the gateway partners and has also been cooperating with the international partners to use the ISS for over 20 years. At the gateway, JAXA has critical contributions, including crews, batteries, and the logistic vehicles, HTVX. These will maintain astronauts' health and performance at the gateway and during lunar surface activities. Next slide, please. For gateway utilization, JAXA will launch a dust sensor, LVDM, as an external payload, and microspace radiation dosimeter, DSpace Padres, as internal payloads. Lunar dust and space radiation are invisible risks for astronauts' health and performance. It will observe hypervelocity dust impacts on the gateway and low-velocity lunar dust transfer from the human landing system to gateway modules. The data will be utilized for risk assessment of gateway. Next slide, please. The deep space and Padres measure space radiation environment, which is crucial for risk assessment in human health and radiation protection research. Deep space is an active dosimeter and Padres is a passive one. Looking ahead to future payloads, we are considering real-time space radiation dose monitoring system, life science missions, technology development supporting astronauts' health management. Next slide, please. Human health science work to maintain astronauts' health and enhance their performance at gateways critical to human space exploration of Moon and beyond. The works will also provide advanced sciences and technology innovations in future. We believe it will be achieved many partners and communities from around the world. This RFI is the first critical milestone for Gateway, lunar and future human exploration beyond. We hope to see an expanding community of teams interested in exploring the possibilities of missions utilization the new experimental human health science ideas near the moon. We welcome your participation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tatsuya and JAXA. Next up, we have Annie Martin from the Canadian Space Agency.
Good day, everyone. The Canadian Space Agency is proud to play a key role in the Lunar Gateway, a vital hub for scientific discovery and technological innovation. Our contributions are focused not only on advancing space exploration, but also on ensuring astronaut health. It's a priority as we look toward future missions to the Moon and Mars. The lessons we learn from space medicine, health research, and initiatives like Health Beyond will benefit both space exploration and Canadians here at home. The Gateway presents unique challenges: radiation exposure, reduced gravity, and the isolation of space that parallel healthcare issues faced by remote and aging populations here on Earth. These challenges also mirror those anticipated in future deep space missions and offer invaluable opportunities for scientific discovery and technological innovation. Through our work with the Artemis program and collaborations with international partners, we aim to leverage Canada's strengths in health and medical research to develop new solutions and a better understanding of health in space. By leveraging Canada's expertise, the CSA is ensuring that both our health innovations and science investigations benefit not only astronauts, but also Canadians facing healthcare challenges here on Earth. With the Gateway as our test bed and you as our collaborators and investigators, we're preparing for the future of space exploration, and we look forward to receiving your ideas. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. Okay, and the fourth agency we'll hear from is NASA. So we have Jancy McPhee.
Good day and good evening, everyone. The NASA Human Research Program's mission is to enable space exploration beyond low Earth orbit by reducing the risks to human health and performance. With the goal of traveling to Mars and beyond, HRP is using ground research facilities, analog environments, the International Space Station, and soon lunar missions to enable cutting-edge science and technology demonstrations. NASA's Artemis program will return humans to the moon and help prepare humanity for the next giant leap to Mars. Now, Gateway is a critical component of Artemis and offers an exciting opportunity to study the effects of deep space radiation, farther distance from Earth, variable isolation and confinement, hostile or closed environments, weightlessness, and most importantly, the combination of all these hazards acting on the human system all in one mission. The long-term vision is to utilize the Gateway to enable future human exploration missions with acceptable risk. Gateway will allow us to develop and test risk mitigation strategies on higher fidelity spaceflight platforms with operational deep space environments. We know we must engage and encompass the full power of the international scientific community to best make use of the human health and research opportunities on the Gateway. We hope this collaborative RFI will be an early step to enable the global community to help identify the best science and technology we should test using the Gateway and bring us all closer to accomplishing future international human exploration missions. So thank you to all of you.
Thank you, Jancy. Yes, as you can hear from all of our agency representatives, we are a very international team that is excited to put this RFI out. So I will touch a little bit on the RFI, and then I'll turn it over to Lishar Dillon, who will talk about some ground rules of this webinar before we get into questions. So we're almost to questions. So the RFI, again, the intent of this is to collect ideas for potential human health science to be performed on Gateway. Gateway, if any of you are familiar with the International Space Station that is orbiting Earth, Gateway is similar but different. It's much smaller. The crew will only be there once a year as opposed to continuous living on the International Space Station. So Gateway has a lot more constraints than what we are used to on the space station, and very limited resources. It costs a lot more money to send things to the moon than it does to low Earth orbit. This RFI is not a mechanism for sponsorship, nor is it a mechanism for funding. Again, so there is no funding attached to this RFI. Please do not provide proprietary information in any responses to the RFI. And it is open to almost anyone around the world. So we really would love to hear some great ideas from communities around the world. So what we are going to do, the next steps, the RFI is open until November 25th. So we're keeping it open 6 weeks. It opened 2 weeks ago. So it will be open towards the end of November. And after that, our HHDWG, that's the Human Health Discipline Working Group, the representatives that you just heard from, we will convene to review the responses, and the responses will just stay within that team is under the Gateway program. So responses will stay within that Gateway program. Responses will not go public. I do want to note no formal or official response from those of us who wrote the RFI is required for this. And based on responses we receive, a potential next step may be to put out a request for proposal that would, in the future, that would be a follow-on to this RFI. But we can't say definitively right now if that will happen. It really depends on the ideas that come in and what the team, after they go through the ideas, what they determine as next best steps. So before we turn it over to questions, I'll go back to the slide, and Lishar, I'm going to turn it over to you to talk a little bit about ground rules for this webinar and asking questions.
Hey, thank you, Lori. I'm sharing my screen with Jancy. I just want to give a reminder to all the attendees that if you have questions, we are really interested in hearing your questions. Please put your questions through the link provided, not in the chat here. I think we're already getting questions through. Please use that. You have the ability to upvote questions. If there's something that you see there that you plan to ask to, please use the upvote button and not just repeat the same question. And if we don't get to answering the questions today, we will put the answers to the questions in a frequently asked questions document on the Inspires website after the presentation. So we'll get to the questions eventually, even if we don't get to it in this hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Lishar. Okay, if I can ask all of our panelists, HHDWG members, to turn your cameras on. I am going to moderate the questions that come in through the chat. And if it is specific to an agency, I will call that agency. But if not, if it's a general question, whoever would like to answer it. So the number one question right now is, can anyone from any country apply, or does it have to be one of the Gateway partner agencies? And if nobody would like to answer the question, I'm happy to do it, but I will first offer it to our panelists.
I'm happy to start off with that. Yes, the answer is anyone can apply. These are just ideas. They are not funded. So, and anyone from any country is able to submit an idea.
Thank you. Okay, another question that's popular is, can a commercial company send an idea? I will just go ahead and say yes. Yes, a commercial company can send an idea. Can we propose an idea for a technology?
I'll take that one again. The answer is yes. We have many needs to enable those future exploration missions, and so there will certainly be a need for technology demonstration and development and countermeasures as well.
And I will just add to it again, think Gateway, again, it's relatively small in size, so very constrained resources. So think very lightweight, physically small things. The smaller, the better, the less the crew has to interact with it, because crew time is going to be very precious on Gateway. So the more it can be automated or autonomous, and the smaller it can be, the better when it comes to technology. And also, as Jancy said, technology demonstrations, you have to, and one thing we always ask ourselves is, why Gateway? Why would you need this on Gateway? Can you test this on the ground, or can you test this on the International Space Station first? What is so special about Gateway that you really need to fly this technology around the moon? So that's a filter that we are constantly asking ourselves. So please be specific and why you feel Gateway is required for the idea. Okay, let me ask some more questions. Let's see. Is the RFI open to accept ideas such as environmental measures that is indirectly human research?
Maybe I can take this one. So the answer is yes. If it's related to protecting humans in deep space, then yes, we are interested in that.
Thank you, Christiane. Okay, Annie, this next one is for you. Is there collaboration between NASA and CSA's Beyond Health initiative, if it is known publicly?
Yes, so thank you for the question. So for those who are wondering, what is the Health Beyond initiative? So it's an initiative at the Canadian Space Agency that is looking at potential Canadian contribution for the Artemis program, and more specifically in terms of medical technologies. And yes, our team is collaborating closely with all the Artemis members and the ISS collaborators to develop a potential project that we could work together. So yeah, and it's and you may have heard of ISS from Mars. So we're actively working on the Earth Independent Medical Operation initiative that CSA is proudly leading in close collaboration with NASA. So lots of collaboration are not known publicly yet, but working on it, and we'll let everybody know when it's the right time. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie. And just a reminder for folks, please do not put a question in the webinar, in the WebEx chat. Please use the link to the separate chat platform. Okay, this is an interesting question. If we think about health issues that could arise, what are your thoughts on treating life-threatening illnesses or injuries in space? Does this RFI seek to address such ideas?
I'll get started, but I bet some of my other colleagues can also fill in. As Annie mentioned, it's very important to have an adequate medical system on these future space exploration missions, which will include both the technologies and also the processes to provide medical care to the crew. And as we get further from low Earth orbit and the moon and onward to Mars, there will be a need for more autonomous processes and tools as well. So yes, we do need to have that system, but again, to underscore what Lori already said, we have reduced mass and volume. And so all of our tools need to be scaled appropriately and addressing the most likely hazards. Does anyone want to add to that?
I think you answered it well, Jancy. Thank you. Okay, the next question, there are sub-questions in here. I'll read the whole question and then I'm happy to take this one. So how long is the expected flight from Earth to the moon orbit and back? Would there be an opportunity for 1 or 2 short 10 to 15 minute experiments on the flight to the moon and back? would the astronauts be on the lunar surface for 7 days, or will they shuttle between Gateway and the surface? And are there opportunities to do experiments on the lunar surface? What is the pre-flight period and post-flight period? So this RFI is only for Gateway. And so I'll walk you through what kind of a general Gateway mission would look like. So a crew of 4 will launch in the Orion spacecraft from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, and they'll travel to the Gateway. And that trip can take anywhere from 5 to 12-ish days, depending on orbital mechanics. And Orion will dock to the Gateway space station. From there, 2 crew members will stay on Gateway, and the other 2 will descend to the surface in the Human Landing System, HLS, and the 2 crew that descend to the surface will be on the surface for just under a week. And then the 2 will launch from the surface, dock to Gateway, again in HLS, and 4 crew members will again be on Gateway for a short amount of time, and then they will travel back to Earth and Orion. What we are scoping this RFI for, we have to stay within the bounds of the Memorandum of Understanding, so the MOUs between the Gateway partners, and those MOUs allow us to do collaborative research for the crew while they are on Gateway. So this RFI does not cover any crew time or resources in Orion. So when the crew is going from Earth to Gateway, nor does it cover any time for the 2 crew on the lunar surface, nor does it cover any time when the 4 crew are in Orion traveling back to Earth. So we are really just scoping this for Gateway. Gateway does have its international partners. And one thing that is in the RFI that I'd like to iterate here is it's important that the science on Gateway be collaborative. Gateway was developed with multiple partners, and it's important that the ideas that we collaborate on them, and it's not just one agency doing science on Gateway. So that is why we put this RFI out, but it is just strictly for the time on Gateway. In terms of the pre-flight and post-flight, in the RFI application, there is, I believe it's just a yes or no question. If your idea would need to gather data on the crew, pre-flight and post-flight. And so we believe that that is covered under the MOUs, at least for the 2 crew that stay on Gateway the whole mission. So what that pre-flight and post-flight time looks like, it's more of what would be needed. When would we need to take data on the crew pre-flight, and then how much post-flight? Typically, again, we're looking at no longer than 12 months pre-flight and no more than 12 months post-flight. So I think I addressed that question. If not, please put a follow-up in there. Okay. This one I'll let anyone talk about. I mentioned it a little bit from the presentation, but if an idea is deemed to be good, what do the next steps look like from the organization's perspective?
Maybe I can start, Lori, for the CSA. So as you mentioned in the introduction, you know, the ideas will help the Human Health Discipline Working Group and the Gateway Utilization panel to make to inform decision as to where we're going with Gateway research investigation. And for what concern the Canadian Space Agency, there will be a separate announcement of opportunities to get research opportunities and future investigations. So this will be a subsequent opportunity that will be open again to every researchers and organization in Canada that will want to apply, and it will be completely separate. So ideas will have to be submitted again and will need to include other type of information depending on our request. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
I would
What-
like to augment that a little bit. There may be some opportunities to have joint requests for research as a collaboration. Again, underlying the spirit that we will try to work collaboratively as much as possible on the gateway research and technology that needs to be done on the gateway, because that is where we have this ability to collaborate as the agencies that are listed here. So we will try to continue that as much as possible. And your contribution of really the best science and technology demonstration that must be done on the gateway will help us as partners to identify what we need to be requesting for potential proposals.
I'll see if Isa or Jaxa would like to respond, and if not, that's okay. We can move on to the next question. Okay. This one is a question for our NSPIRES colleagues. So does your organization need to be registered with NSPIRES and SAM.gov in order to respond to this RFI?
That's probably a better question for Ben to answer, but yes, I believe the answer is yes.
So for RFIs, actually, the answer is no.
Okay.
Sorry, Lishar.
No.
For if it was a proposal, the answer would be yes, but RFIs use a different structure. I believe it's term notifications of intent when you submit it, so don't be confused by that. But those do not require that you be affiliated or linked to an organization when you submit a response.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ben. That's why we have you on.
Okay, Jancy, I'm going to direct this next one to you. The RFI writing requirements are quite short, 1,000 characters per question. Given that there are multiple study areas, radiation, confinement, how would you like us to answer all of these with such a small written response?
So my first instinct would be to feel free to submit multiple ideas. So I do not believe that the system limits you to just one idea. If you can separate them into multiple idea descriptions, that would probably be the best and would help us all as this group to review those ideas. Otherwise, we just we're trying to actually facilitate your ability to submit ideas by not asking for a 20-page description. So, but we all do recognize that that may mean that you'll have to choose your words carefully if you need to describe it all in one submission.
Thank you. Okay, can a single institution provide multiple separate responses to this RFI? I believe you just answered that with a yes. Okay. Let's see, the next question. Continuous monitoring of humans to do discovery science associated with human physiological responses is of interest. Can NASA coordinate with flight suit or IVA suit providers and an interested party to incorporate those sensors into everyday clothing? So I will talk on kind of behalf of the greater Artemis picture and then open it up to our panelists. So if you have an idea that is would be a wearable device, say, again, we scope this to when the crew is on Gateway. Legally, again, the two crew that stay on Gateway while the other two are on the surface, we may be able to, through, again, it has to be through one of the Gateway partners to be able to access those crew members while they're in transit. It's a little bit of a gray space, so I can't say definitively yes or no here. But the crew would definitely be able to wear it while they're on Gateway, while they're in their flight suits during launch and landing on Earth. That's maybe at this point, but while they are in the suits on the lunar surface, that is a no. Again, that is kind of outside of Gateway. That's under a different program. The Artemis Enterprise is composed of multiple programs, so it makes it a little complicated and complex. So a wearable device, the crew would be able to wear it, again, while they're on Gateway, but not on the lunar surface. And again, potentially for the two Gateway crew while they're in transit. Does anyone would like to add to that answer? Okay. Let's see, autonomous surgical device development. That is a question, but I don't know what, if that is is that something we would think is a good idea? Does anyone want to address that, or I can move on to the next?
Maybe I can just comment on that. So I'm not sure whether we would really be doing surgeries on the Gateway, because there's still a possibility to evacuate astronauts if there is a serious situation. However, we are interested to develop devices that would provide acute care. So, for example, to treat burn wounds, there are some researchers looking into in situ bioprinting, for example. So that is a technology that is still interesting, also for the Gateway.
Thank you. We do have a couple questions here. Again, I may have to direct it to Ben. Can additional materials be submitted with the RFI or just a PDF written response? And again, do you have a preferred presentation format, written document plus visual presentation? So I don't believe we were requesting presentations, just responses to the specific answers. But Ben, I will defer to you on when someone goes in to actually respond to the RFI.
So attachments are not enabled for responses to this RFI. If you feel that you absolutely need one and can't wait for NASA to get back to you about your idea and request more information, then just contact the points of contact in the RFI and let them know.
So I wanted to do one go back and then one detail that we may or may not have mentioned. So one of the go backs is to just stress what everyone has been saying here, that we would really like the science and technology demonstrations to need to be on the Gateway. So that means if a technology is fairly low in its technology readiness level, it may need more verification on the ground or even on the ISS before being used on the Gateway. So please be thinking about that when you propose ideas, because if it looks like it's not really ready for the Gateway, then it will not fare as well in the evaluation. And then I did want to mention something that may help people to respond to the answers. We are using the system set up and managed by our NSPIRES colleagues because it allows us to take away the details of who is proposing an idea, so that they are as anonymous as possible, and therefore the ideas are being treated as fairly as possible. And I know nobody's asked that, but I think it's worth mentioning that that is the plan here. So we won't know exactly who submitted it, not even what country submitted it initially. And I think it's important to let you all know that.
Thank you, Jancy. One question that has popped to the top here is, would you like combined answers per topic area or multiple 1,000 character responses per topic? Trying to remember how it is laid out.
I think that's a little bit related to what we discussed earlier. I think people will have to decide whether they think that their ideas are actually multiple ideas or one idea. I don't think it's a problem if you submit it more than one time with the different focus, beyond being excessive. But, in general, if you're suggesting a technology or suggesting a countermeasure or a very important way to answer some really key information that is about risks and gaps that we have, sometimes it's easier to do those as separate, clear suggestions or ideas. So again, it will have to be a little bit up to the submitter, but I could see it going both ways.
Thank you. Okay, next question. And I can answer this, and then the next one I'm going to put to the panelists. I was wondering if there is a backup gateway for a variety of reasons. There is not a backup gateway. There's only one station that is planning to be built. Okay, the next question. What would be the length of duration that an experiment could be conducted, considering the crew is only there once a year? So I think this is interesting for crewed opportunities and uncrewed opportunities. So if anyone would like to address that.
Lori, I think you're actually the best one to answer that question, since you have the most knowledge about the actual design, how long crew will be there, and what will be happening in between visits of the crew.
Happy to do that. So initially the crew will be there on Gateway. Again, the crew, especially the two crew that continuously stay on Gateway, only for about 15 to 17 days, again, in that date range. And there may be longer missions that happen on later Artemis missions, but nothing in the terms of, months or years. It's going to be on the order of days. And for the 11 and a half months out of the year where no crew is on Gateway, Gateway will go into a dormancy mode. And in the RFI, we do link a Gateway Capabilities website. That's a public website. And that has a lot of information on, I know someone was asking about power on Gateway. There's information, public information on there about kind of what that, a little bit about what that dormancy environment looks like, but it's going to be cold and dry. There's also that will be coming out maybe in the next month. I don't know if it will be in time for this in this RFI window, but it's called the Gateway Users Guide, and it's for all potential payload proposers for Gateway. We are not in charge of that user's guide, and it's going through final reviews, but that will be something that is very handy. And if it does come out before this RFI closes, we will be sure to update it on the Inspires page. Any other thoughts on crewed versus uncrewed experiments? Okay. Let's see. Okay, Annie, this one I think would be good for you. With simulation exercises of common serious healthcare injuries and telemedicine support of their management, be of interest to assess what can be taught / managed in space as a research project. Could pre-flight and post-flight health management knowledge be evaluated?
Yeah, so I think, this is a good example of, the type of activities that, could include, pre-flight and post-flight, which we will look into as we're doing for current ISS, the scientific investigation. And one thing that, I just, maybe would like to remind everyone is the uniqueness of Gateway. So if it's something that could be done on the International Space Station, this is different. So to think really in terms of how is Gateway unique in that we need to do the scientific experiment up there, considering the constraints of Gateway. in the different environment. But all that to say that, all ideas are welcome at this point, exercise, just like telemedicine and other effect of, radiation and space on the human body.
Thank you. Okay, this is an interesting question. Once the RFP launches, so I think it's if an RFP launches, but if an RFP were to launch, will there be a process to collaborate with RFI responders with similar proposals?
I think at this point, I think that, and I'm really just thinking off the cuff here, people are not necessarily going to be aware who else proposed the same idea, but I think that this committee can take that question back and think about it, because we are always trying to imagine how we can best foster the organic formation of international science teams when there is a common interest across the different agencies. And we have talked a lot about whether once we've identified particular topics, whether we host something like a meeting and people who are all interested in that topic can engage and potentially meet each other and organically form teams. And that is just one example of the kinds of things that we do discuss in the spirit of trying to really foster the best from around the world addressing the question, often in collaboration with others from other agencies and countries. So thank you for that question.
Okay, here's another good question. Do the ideas need to have a practical impact for the mission, or can it be fundamental research?
I think that we need to speak a little bit agency to agency on that. But for instance, the interests of the NASA Human Research Program are very applied. It is not basic science. We really want to answer the questions that are specific for what we need to enable the future exploration missions and protect human health and performance. So those will be the questions that we are looking for answers for.
Thank you. And I'll open it up to our other agency colleagues to see if they would also like to respond on fundamental versus applied ideas.
Maybe I'll go first then. So in ESA's perspective, it's shared with NASA that we want to do activities that are applied. So what will enable us to go for long-term deep space missions. However, we are still working on understanding all of the stressors on the human body that space does. And therefore, if there is a project that is sort of in between the fundamental and the applied, we are still interested in that because we don't yet know all of the risks that are out there. But there needs to be a touch of how it could potentially be applied to exploration class missions.
Okay. And Tatsuya and Annie, if you'd like to comment for JAXA and CSA on the question of, are we looking for, well, let me read it again. Does the ideas have to have a practical impact for the mission, or can it be fundamental research? Because again, I think this is agency, a little agency specific.
Thank you, Lori. So JAXA still have discussed the details regarding the fundamental research. But I think that the fundamental research for gateway utilization is so important. This activity make us understand the physiological science and so medical science. So for deep space. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I can speak for the Canadian Space Agency. So we have not defined yet any specific areas of research that we will be targeting in the next announcement of opportunities. But the fundamental and applied, will be both applicable and as we define with our collaborators, the kind of project we will do, because, just, saying again, what Jancy highlighted previously, that we will be looking for collaboration then, pending on, the potential impact of that research, both meaning fundamental and applied research will be considered.
Thank you. Thank you all.
I just wanted to take this opportunity yet again that for the fundamental research, please make sure it really needs to happen on the gateway.
Yes. Why gateway? That is one of the questions. Yeah. Okay. Next question. Under the assumption that good ideas are submitted, what would be the timeline for getting these experiments to gateway? So I'm happy to take the initial response to that. So again, general timeline is that the responses to this RFI are due the end of November. We will convene our team to review the responses and determine next steps. And one of those next steps could be an RFP or an AO, whether that is one agency putting it out, multiple agencies, or a joint AO between the agencies. Or an option is we do not do an RFP. So of those different options, if an RFP or an AO were to go forward after this, that would possibly go out in 2025, and then ideas would come back. And the ideas would have to be sponsored by one of the gateway partners. So this is where it's a little different for an RFP or an AO. So an idea would have to be sponsored by a gateway partner, which are the agencies you see here, because those are the agencies that have utilization or research access on gateway. They have access to upmass and a logistics module that will fly to gateway, so that module will not carry crew but logistics. And they have access to crew time for at least the 2 crew members that stay on gateway. So after that, it would be determined which mission would be most appropriate to fly. So after an RFP, if proposals are selected, then it is up to that agency or agencies with the gateway program to determine which missions would be the best target. I will say currently the first gateway mission is Artemis 4, but the Orion spacecraft will be carrying with it the IHAB module, so the International Habitation Module, and we'll have to outfit that module and the other habitation module, the Halo module that will be at Gateway. So Artemis 4 will be very demanding for the crew in terms of outfitting Gateway for the first time. So it's difficult to say the year or mission anything would fly on. Again, we have to go from idea to proposal or AO to selection to then determining which mission or flight. So I'm going to open it up to my colleagues here to add any other information on that, on kind of general timeline or as you see it from your agency. That's okay. I probably over answered that one. Okay. Previous anthropological research has used astronauts' diaries as a source of information about astronauts' living situations. These diaries were encrypted and anonymized. Would this method of data collection remain viable on Gateway? Would anyone like to take that about astronaut diaries on Gateway?
We are not requesting proposals at this point, just ideas. So if you believe that that's a good idea, then I believe there's no harm in submitting that sort of idea with the clear justification of why the idea seems like a good one.
Next question, are human nutrition and food departments of the space agencies planning any research? Any thoughts?
A lot of the food and nutrition work will start first on the ground and the ISS. And you mentioned the ISS for Mars work. There is actually a movement to try to move from long duration ground research studies to potentially exploring a food system, which would include nutrition and the actual packaging and palatability of food, the study of the entire importance of the system on the ISS. So part of the challenge here would be to underscore why a food or nutrition study should be done on the Gateway, especially given, as Lori mentioned, the fact that these missions are shorter than those in low Earth orbit. So again, it's up to your good idea description to let us know what looks like a good plan for the Gateway.
Okay, I think we'll do maybe 2 more questions and we're getting to the top of the hour here. Would it be possible to monitor some astronauts' biochemical parameters in a non-invasive way while in Gateway and or the moon? This is regarding potential countermeasures for long-term manned missions. So again, not on the moon. We cannot access the 2 crew members that are on the moon with this RFI. So it's for the Gateway though, non-invasive ways to measure some of the astronauts' parameters. Anyone like to take that question?
Non-invasive monitoring is a topic of a lot of discussion and importance. And there are existing technologies and needs for new technologies. So I think that in general, the non-invasive biomedical parameters is an area of interest. The challenge, of course, is going to be how will we handle the data? How will how will you set up those non-invasive technologies? Are they simple wearables or videos? So I think that the details of what you're thinking of might be important without getting so detailed that it becomes a proprietary submission. So good question. And please describe in more detail in your submission exactly what you're thinking without getting to the proposal level of detail.
Other thoughts on that question? Okay. This next one, are we submitting ideas for the first Gateway mission, not for a sequence, which can be extended in follow-up missions? I believe that, but anyone in human research will tell you to meet your N, you will need multiple missions to meet that minimum data set. So again, an idea from an RFI, if that turns into an RFP, and that would be selected to fly, yes, that payload or that study could cross multiple missions if it's not just say technology, but if or even if it is, but if you need data from multiple missions, yes, that is something that we could do. Again, if for I'll say a payload candidate or study candidate, that would again come after an RFP, which comes after the RFI. Okay, one more question here. Let's see. I think it got bumped up. Yes. Does the idea have to be connected to specific HHDWG objectives, and do those objectives need to be identified? So I'm gonna close my mouth and let you all answer that one. I think it's a good question.
So we may have differences of opinion on the answer to this. So anyone else, please feel free. I think it's very important to make the argument as to what gap or challenge do we think we're addressing with the question, as to whether or not it has to point exactly at the list of human health discipline working group challenges that Lori showed earlier. I think the answer is, at least on my behalf, that's not a requirement. But I do think that you have to let us know why you think it's important that we include a technology or address a question or test a countermeasure. Anyone else have thoughts? And it's okay to be contradictory.
I agree with you, Jancy, and because this is a request for information where we want to hear from you and your ideas. It is the moment to let us know what you think of the objectives and the requirements. So I would tend to say that it would be great to hear all ideas, even if you doubt about how does it specifically address. I would say, take the time, go for it, and I would love to read all those ideas.
Thank you, Annie.
And
Isa,
Jancy, I would say as long as it is for Gateway specifically.
Isa and Jaxa, any last thoughts?
Isa fully agrees with these statements.
I'd accept agree. So all ideas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Well, we are at the end of the hour. We will put a frequently asked questions on the Inspire's website. So, and this recording will be there as well. So feel free to review it. And also there are points of contact listed if you would like to send emails with follow-up questions. So let me ask our panelists if there's any last thoughts or questions you'd like to pose.
I just wanted to say thank you in advance. We are very interested in what your ideas are. These are precious resources and important missions to take humanity further into space. And we are grateful for you to share your views. So thank you in advance.
And I'd like to thank our panelists for joining us today. And again, thank you everyone for joining us today for this teleconference. Looking forward to see all the ideas. Thank you.